This is Wantop Baboya College, Certificate 3 in Theology and Ministry, and this is Lesson 8 of the unit Indigenous Christian Spirituality. And in this lesson, I'm going to read the content of the lesson. If you've been listening to lesson, or the recording for recording number 5, a lot of the content in this particular lesson will be covered by the pastor in that recording, but it's nowhere near as tight and as tidy because it's basically a classroom yarn. He's responding to questions that are coming from the class, and what was done later on was to actually condense it into this lesson. And it's just a simple Bible study and getting people to think about it. So I'm going to read it. So when I'm saying I've noticed there are a few places here where these are the pastor's words, but as I've been reading them, my own experience of ministry is actually complemented, and I fully read the pastor and what he says here. So let's have a look at the book. Well, actually, we're not going to look at the book first. We're going to, there it is. Move down to lesson. Here we go, that's the one. So you need to be open to lesson 8 on page 53. The first thing is to actually read Luke chapter 4. So let's bring that up on screen. And what you have here is my Bible program for a Windows computer. So we have the books of the Bible here on the left and the chapter. So Luke chapter 4, you may be able to see the shading there. And the text is here in the Good News Bible. I've got a few different versions. So if I click on the word Nazareth, you'll notice down the bottom here, there's a dictionary in the bottom panel, and it tells you, I've just clicked on the word Nazareth, and it tells you a bit about Nazareth from the Bridgeway Bible Dictionary. I've got a couple of other dictionaries there as well, but when you're actually attending Wantop, we do have a number of copies of the Bridgeway Dictionary. It's not necessarily the world's best dictionary, but it was written by a missionary for people whose first language was other than English. And the beauty about it is this missionary who's done it has actually made the book available online for free. And I do mention that in the resources video, which you may have accessed as you began the course. The other panels they've got here, don't worry too much about the editor. There's a note-taking thing. But there are a couple of commentaries, and this is also the Bridgeway commentary. Again, this is one I would not recommend necessarily, but again, it's free, which is, for many of us, a big issue. So let's read from Luke chapter 4, and Lord, we ask that you bring your understanding to our reading. Then Jesus went to Capernaum, a town in Galilee, where he taught the people on the Sabbath. They were all amazed at the way that he taught, because he spoke with authority. In the synagogue was a man who had a spirit of an evil demon in him. He screamed out loud and in a loud voice, "What do you want from us, Jesus of Nazareth? Are you here to destroy us? I know who you are. You are God's holy messenger." And Jesus ordered the spirit, "Be quiet," and come out of the man. The demon threw the man down in front of them and went out of him without doing any harm. The people were all amazed and said to one another, "What kind of words are these? With authority and power, this man gives orders to the evil spirits, and they come out." And the report about Jesus spread everywhere in that region. So we turn back to the book. So here again, people were amazed. I'll just see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Yep. Amazed at Jesus' teaching and actions. With authority and power, this man gives orders to the evil spirits and they come out. After Jesus came back from the desert and he started teaching in the synagogues, he's confronted by an evil spirit. Now, we have to remember what Jesus was doing around Galilee. He was preaching the good news. Now, for the people in this area, it was good news, not only because they were living in poverty, but because they were being oppressed. And that means that they were being controlled by a government that was not their own, told where they could go, what they could do, and there was a lot of injustice. So in Luke chapter 4, verse 34, this spirit, evil spirit, says, "Are you here to destroy us? I know who you are. You are God's holy messenger." But Jesus stopped him. "Be quiet and come out of the man," Jesus said. Now, in some of the Good News Bibles, this is the picture. And people are amazed, wondering who this person is. With authority and power, this man gives orders to evil spirits and they come out. So maybe some of them didn't really understand the real meaning of the good news. Here's Jesus in action, trying to get the message of God to the people, and there's a confrontation, face to face, facing off, ready to have a fight. Why a confrontation? Well, it was the aim and goal of Jesus' actions to destroy the power, the kingdom of the devil. It was his aim and his goal to get rid of that wall that separated people from God, man from God, and take away the wall that enclosed people to themselves. The devil did not want this to happen. So the devil's way was from the very beginning. The devil knew that from the very beginning that Jesus came into this world and that he would destroy his power. He knew that one day this Jesus would be on the cross and that would be the finish of him. All along, the devil was trying to get to Jesus first. And to quote the pastor, in his temptation, he said, "You bow down to me and I'll give you everything. You can have all that. Look at the world. Look at George Rosendale here. You can have him." But Jesus said, "No way. You get behind me, Satan." Jesus said no to this way of power. So what would have happened if the people had listened to Jesus? What was the devil trying to do? It was trying to reveal the person of Jesus to the people. That doesn't sound like a bad thing. But what was it the people were looking for? They were looking for the Messiah, but they were looking for a conqueror. See, they had this idea that the Messiah would come and take over the empire so that they would become citizens, subjects of this great, powerful person. So that's what the devil was trying to do. Make the people follow this idea, not Jesus, follow this idea that they already had and say, "Hey, that's the person. Let's make him king." But Jesus said to him, "You shut up." There was this other time that when Jesus fed a hungry crowd on a grassy hill. You know what happened after that? What were they going to do with Jesus? They were going to make him a king, a worldly king, there and then. Because that's what they were looking for. They wanted somebody who could provide things for them. All of these things for them. But that's not Jesus' way. Jesus has another way. Jesus again and again spelled it out through his teaching. And if you want to highlight or underline this section, this is really good. My kingdom is not of this world. That's clear to us too. The kingdom of Jesus Christ is not of this world. When you serve Jesus, don't ever dream or think that you're going to have everything. No. 30 years I've been serving and I'm no richer than the day I started off. And it's the pastor's words, but it's also mine, I think, as I record this similar period of time. And that's the way it is, because his kingdom is not of this world. Maybe not richer in material things, but rich in the knowledge and the spiritual life of Jesus, which is what we should be aiming for. You know, that's why we chase the politicians around, because we think they're going to make us rich and give us things. We look to these people because the kings of this world are expected to give us things. Jesus, no. We get nothing from him in material things. Again and again, remember he said, my kingdom is not of this world. And the devil was trying to get these people to think of him as a worldly king. If he could reveal Jesus as that kind of Messiah, that Messiah, the devil would win. The people would make Jesus king. But Jesus did not want that because his kingdom was of another world. Now, the power of Jesus hasn't changed. We can shut out the devil. He can still order the devil out of our lives and get rid of him. It has happened to many people, and thank God for that. We see as we look at a different passage, as we turn to Luke chapter 4, and again I'll bring that up on screen here. Luke chapter 4. Yeah, we read on. Just when I practiced before, I knew we go and have a look at a mark reading towards the end of the lesson. So this particular passage, verse 38, Jesus left the synagogue and went to Simon's home. Simon's mother-in-law was sick with a high fever, and they spoke to Jesus about her. He went and stood at her bedside and ordered the fever to leave her. The fever left her, and she got up at once and began to wait on them. After sunset, all who had friends who were sick with various diseases brought them to Jesus. He placed his hands on every one of them and healed them all. Demons also went out from many people, screaming, "You are the Son of God." And Jesus gave the demons an order and would not let them speak, because they knew he was the Messiah. So, Jesus went into the home of Simon Peter's mother-in-law. Now, we actually get this in a couple of different Gospels. In Mark's Gospel, it says that Jesus reached out and helped her up from the bed. She sat up and was well. Now, Luke doesn't give us that picture, but it does say that Jesus stood at a bedside. A very simple drawing there. His presence was right there. And if he stood at a bedside, surely he would have touched her, as every other minister and pastor does with somebody who's sick. And pastor says, I generally do that, touch the person. Jesus would have done that too. And I've got to say, I do that when I visit somebody who's sick. Maybe to hold their hand, maybe to put a hand on their forehead as you pray for them. Sometimes you can't, particularly if somebody's nice to you, but you do what you can. This touch is extremely comforting. Now, that wonderful touch of Jesus, in this case, healed her. And you can look it up in Mark 1, 29 to 34. We're not going to read that here, but I encourage you to do that. Jesus took her by the hand and the fever left her. That wonderful touch of Jesus is also there today. How does he touch us? He touches us in many different ways. He touches us through our friends, through our ministers, and he touches us through other Christians. And whenever we touch people, if we have the love of Christ in us, that touch means something special. Because that touch of Jesus is part of Aboriginal culture, or of Aboriginal culture, just as it was part of the culture in the Old Testament. So today, as you go around, you say, "G'day, brother, g'day, sister," you shake their hand. That hand can be pretty cold. But this touching thing is wonderful. Pastor says, I get myself embarrassed because I go along and I'll put my arm around people, pat them on the shoulder, and that's the way of our people. And if I don't touch them, that means I don't care about them. So it's important. It is really difficult in 2020 because this is one of the ones we're told to be very careful with. But you see, the thing is today, Christ's not here with us to touch us. But if you have Christ living in you, he uses your hands to touch another person. And after this, it said, if we go back, Jesus went on to other places. And we're going to follow through with a bit of that, jumping to another gospel. So in Luke 4, it says at daybreak, 42, which is just after the bit that we've read, daybreak, Jesus left the town and went off to a lonely place. It had been busy. He'd been teaching in the synagogue. There'd been a big night of healing, big revival meeting outside Simon Peter's house. He was looking for a place to rest. But the people started looking for him. When they found him, they tried to keep him from leaving. He said to them, I must preach the good news about the kingdom of God in other towns also, because that is what God has sent me to do. So he preached in the synagogues throughout the country. So he went in other places, and that's really important. One of the things we've got to remind ourselves is that when God calls us to be leaders in his church, God is not just calling us to the people we can see in our house or around us. God is calling us to share this wonderful news to other people. And that may be in all other places. Where is it that God might be calling you? And Jesus actually does this. In our diploma unit in John's Gospel, we get people to compare these stories across the 4 Gospels. And Jesus does, after this period, eventually end up in Gentile territory, non-Jewish territory. And it's useful to go and have a look at what he says here. So let's have a look at Mark 7. So I'll pull the Bible up again, change to Mark 7. Yeah, and then we're looking at the Syrophoenician woman's faith. Now, that's a really hard word, and I've had students say, Rob, where's Syrophoenicia? Well, in Jesus' time, the country no longer existed. This is a woman who's following a culture which had pretty much died out hundreds of years before. We don't have a parallel here in Australia. Maybe it's somebody who follows a goth culture, dresses differently. There are people I've met who like medieval culture, so going back to Middle Ages Europe and dress up like that. She's different and treated strangely because she is different. And that is actually a really good point to hang on to as we read on. So let's have a look at this, which is actually a pretty harsh statement. So then Jesus left and went away to the territory near the city of Tyre, which is on the northern coast. He went to a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, but he couldn't stay hidden. A woman whose daughter had an evil spirit in her heard about Jesus and came to him at once and fell at his feet. The woman was a Gentile born in the region of Phoenicia near Syria. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter, but Jesus answered, let's first feed the children. It isn't right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Sir, she answered, even the dogs under the table eat the children's leftovers. So Jesus said to her, because of that answer, go back home where you find the demon has gone out of your daughter. And she went home and found a child lying on the bed. The demon had indeed gone out of her daughter. So this is a really different kind of story. And we need to think about it carefully. So, go back to, so this woman is showing faith. Jesus has now crossed over into Gentile country. The important thing to see is what's happening. On the map, we see the country of Israel and the country of the Gentiles, and normally they just didn't mix. So Jesus is trying to, and I'm pretty sure that word is not an original. It's in every version I can find. He's trying to do something and say that there should be no wall to separate you, people, from the love of God. And there should be no wall between you and them. So he goes to this place, and the Gentile woman comes and says, hey, Jesus, my daughter's sick. So what does Jesus say here? Yeah, let's first feed the children. It isn't right to take children's bread and throw it to the dogs. So what did this mean for the woman? If you knew a bit about Jesus and these people, this was really very, very hard saying of Jesus. A terrible saying of Jesus. Yeah, God's son. Fancy calling this woman a dog. There's the picture. Dogs under the table. And as you can see, they're pretty hungry dogs. But what was Jesus really trying to do? He wasn't calling the woman a dog. He was saying, this is how people treat you. Remember, she was a bit different as well. This is how people treat you. They treat you as a dog. And this is something I can't say with conviction, but it is something each one of you will know. That's how people treat you too. People get treated as dogs. As Pastor says, they've treated us as dogs and animals, and we know that's true in Australia. Most of us know that. But what Jesus says to this woman is, yes, this is what they say, but what do you think of it? And this is where she shows her faith. In spite of how she's treated, she says, yes, I know, Lord, you came for these people. I know you came to help these people, but surely you can just let me have one crumb. Let me have a crumb, a little bit of that grace that you brought to help my child. That was faith. And that's why Jesus says, because you believe, because of your faith, let it be done. And Jesus said, go back home and you'll find that your daughter is healed. So here's a wonderful picture. A Gentile comes to Jesus and asking Jesus, who was an Israelite, can you help my daughter? And it was against the custom of the Israelites to talk or even help another person who was a Gentile. And Jesus broke the barrier. And it was pretty hard for the disciples to accept it. So what's he saying to us? He's saying to us, yeah, you go and do the same. You get rid of the barrier. Don't let the barriers stop you from crawling under the table and helping people, reaching out to them with the love of God. Don't let those barriers stop you. Yeah, there's a big barrier between this woman and me, Jesus says, but that didn't stop me from getting right down under the table and helping her. It was a little crumb that she needed. And that's what God says to each and every one of us. Get off the table, help the people who are in need of my love, even if it's only a little bit. Give it all and help them. So that's the Bible study. Then you get a chance to think and reflect. And I encourage you to talk to friends, talk to people in your church, your pastor, your support person, even ring up one of the teachers and talk to them. But this one was, but the first thing is, how's Jesus' healing touched your life? Share some experience. It may be dramatic, it may be simple. It may be that your heart is made whole. I was talking to somebody this morning who now no longer lives in fear and anger, but in the grace and the love of God. That's been part of his healing. One of the stories that I share is when I was a young man, I was very allergic to wattle. And I prayed to God and said, look, if this lady is supposed to be my future wife, you better do something about it, because outside my future wife's house, there was this huge wattle tree. I've never been affected by it ever since. Thank God for that. So it may be something dramatic like that, maybe something simple, maybe something profound, but it'll be your answer. So, and we encourage you to get used to talking about that. The next one is, what hurts need healing amongst your mob today? Now, there are a lot of answers that come in that are very similar, but there may be things which are very important in your community, and we encourage you to make them, and just make some notes on the sorts of things that people need healing. And it may be drug addiction, it may be domestic violence, it may be mental health issues, depression, suicide. But there could be some real issues in your community about access to food, access to good medical care, injustice, control of your land and your country. restoration of language may also be, those are some of the issues you might want to put in. It'll be your mob, your place, your people. This is one which usually generates massive discussion in class. What are some of the issues that stolen generations suffer from? And some of the things that happen there are loss of identity, being cut off from your extended mob and family. It's actually one of the joys that I've seen in the last couple of years, seeing students who come from a variety of different places making those new connections. It is really interesting to see how that all works, but there are things that need healing from one generation to another, and we're only just starting to realise how important those things are. So just write a few notes down there. And then the last question, or the second last question, is how can we as Indigenous Christians bring Jesus' healing to our people? How can you do that? And I think in the lesson there are a few suggestions as how we can break down those barriers. And you can use the Bible text in this lesson or in any other unit that you've done, which, write down the reference to 3 New Testament texts that speak of Jesus dying for everyone. And that is the lesson. So I hope you're really enjoying the rest of the stuff and Uncle's pastor's teaching, and I'm hoping that we will get some other of the college's video resources available for people to watch online, make them more generally accessible to everybody. Okay, and that is lesson 8.